I'm going to show you guys how to maintain a chaotic neutral roleplay. And the purpose of a chaotic neutral roleplay is to kill everyone. So when one side is winning, you start killing them to ensure that everyone dies. Because if you help one side too much, then you won't be able to kill the other side because they'll be too strong. You want to weaken everyone and then just kind of get all the kills. So naturally, I'm going to want to attack the thieves first, because in this battle royale, a thief can always disengage, and I want to secure the kill on the thieves first, so that I can focus on the Dragonhunters who have a little bit less of a chance to escape. And as you can see, one of the thieves goes down very handedly because there's 3 Dragonhunters on them, and the second thief is now going to run away, so I have to now attack the Dragonhunters. I've swapped my sort of alignment to attacking the Dragonhunters, but we're getting a little bit pressured, so I have to go behind terrain there. And now the thief, who he does not like to play fair, as you can see, gets a kill on the other Dragonhunter. You know, thieves are not known for being lawful either. They're quite chaotic. And he actually gets a kill on the other Dragonhunter. So I manipulated the other thief to get the Dragonhunter kills for me. And now at this point, we know the thieves do not like to play fair. So he's going to stealth up and wait for me until his other friend arrives. Now buckle up, because this battle royale has not been won yet. And as you can see, I'm going to stand on this terrain because SD Thief gets kind of destroyed by the cliffs like that because they can't use their sword 3. And now I get a nice pull on the other thief, and I'm going to use my true shot and get the kill there. So looks like we are in a good position. All I need to do is cleave this body very safely, and we've got the winner chicken dinner. And we get a nice little cleave there, and good GVG. And as you can see here, the other Dragonhunter was taking a lawful alignment, which is his mistake, because it ended in him losing the battle royale. With the End of Dragons expansion title being revealed, it's fitting to go over a build that is good at ending dragons. So this is the Medi-Trapper Dragonhunter, and it's been useful in PvP at the start of Heart of Thorns when traps were really overpowered. They nerfed those and true shot a lot, so it's seeing a lot less play in PvP. However, in World vs. World, it's still really good because true shot damage is unnerfed, the trap scales really hard with power and World v World and PvE stats. And the main reason you don't really play this variant of the Dragonhunter in PvP is because you can't really afford to not go heavy damage on Dragonhunter anymore. It's too role independent for it to be too good at one role. So you just rather take one thing that's more optimal at doing damage or more optimal at holding nodes. So the Medi-Trapper kind of doesn't really see play in PvP because you need to go like Radiance or like Burn Dragonhunter to actually fill a specific role better. So yeah, but in World vs. World, you have enough damage that you can actually afford to go Meditations with the Valor trait line and get some nice sustain while also dealing lots of damage. So it's actually a really good roaming build, and let's go straight into the traits. So in Valor, you will get Aegis when you get hit below 50% health. It's kind of nice because Aegis uptime, you'll see, is really good with the Unscathed Contender trait. You gain Smiter's Boon whenever you use a heal skill, which is a meditation that will cleanse 2 conditions, and because it's a meditation, it will scale with Monk's Focus synergy, which is whenever you use a meditation, you'll gain 1,500 healing, and then Fury, and that's an AoE Fury too, so it's nice for your allies. But yeah, you cleanse 2 conditions and will heal and give yourself Fury whenever you use the heal skill, and that's pretty nice. You also gain protection after you block with Aegis, not too important. Stalwart Defender is a really good trait because it lowers the cooldown of your shield skills, and your shield skills are very high impact, and it also gives you 240 toughness, which is quite a bit, while you're wielding a shield. And this is super important because while you're in your sword shield weapon set, that's when you're usually kiting. So you do most of your damage in longbow and most of your kiting and trying to survive in shield. So yeah, the extra toughness is really good, and this is a build that has a lot of Condi Cleanse but actually doesn't handle power builds as well. So the toughness is very good. You also gain a little bit of might whenever you block, which is nice, and we already talked about Monk's Focus. Gives you sustain and recharge reduction on all your meditations, and you're running 4 meditations, so obviously that's just one of the main reasons why I thought that Medi-Trapper should be good in PvP, but it really isn't, because meditations in general are just really good on Guardian, and to be able to use them with Monk's Focus is just so good. But often, yeah, in PvP, you kind of have to like go with meditations without having the Monk's Focus because you need to be more aggressive. So yeah, it's really nice to use Valor trait line on DH. But with the Virtues trait line, you'll also get a lot of synergy with your Virtues because the DH Virtues are all really high impact abilities, and you'll get recharge reduction on all of your Virtues because of going into the Virtues trait line, which is good. Using them more often gives you a lot more impact more often, and you'll also gain boons whenever you use one of your Virtues, depending on which one you use, which is kind of nice. And if they hit an ally, it can give it to them as well, so that's nice for team play. This build is more of like a team play than a solo roamer, but you can also solo roam. And then Unscathed Contender gives you 20% damage while you have Aegis, which is a very large modifier for one source. So you gain Aegis just passively over time. Every 30 seconds you'll gain it while your Shield of Courage is off cooldown. You'll gain Aegis from Shield of Judgment, and you'll also gain an Aegis from the whenever you use your elite skill, which will recharge Shield of Courage and give it again. So yeah, pretty much you want to have Aegis up during your big burst damage combos, and we'll talk about those later as well. So really big damage there, and you also gain a little bit of retail, which is fine whenever you use a Virtue, but it's not really going to add up to too much because you're trying to be more slippery than tanky with this build. Then you have Absolute Resolution, which is really good because it gives you a little bit more healing over time, but mostly it's for the active effect, which is a 3 Condi Cleanse for you and any ally that it hits. And the F2 is actually kind of a small radius and has a weird kind of hitbox to it because it's also a leap and there's sort of like latency sometimes. But yeah, it will heal you for a decent amount though, and cleanse 5 conditions because it cleanses 2 at the start of it and 3 if it finishes casting, and it can get interrupted, so you want to be careful with that. So then you will gain a little bit of damage whenever you have boons on you, so that's kind of nice too because you have a lot of boon access on this build. And lastly, you have Indomitable Courage, which gives you a stun break on your F3. So this is really good because you have actually 2 stun breaks in this build already, but they sort of serve a role that you don't really want to use them as a stun break, right? Because Contemplation is a full Condi Cleanse, so do you want to use it for a Condi Cleanse or a stun break? Not always is that going to, those 2 situations going to occur at the same time, so you sometimes want to use it for the Condi Cleanse but are not getting like stun break value. And then Judge's Intervention as well is a stun break, but you want to be using that as like an engage or a disengage skill, not always as a stun break. So having Indomitable Courage is really good because it allows you to use a stun break ability that is actually really good in the situation of needing a stun break, right? Because you want to use your F3 when you want to defend, right? And start blocking. And then it also gives a little bit of stability for you and your allies. So it's just good for like stomping down bodies or rezzing, kind of like those situations. Then in Dragonhunter, you have dulled senses. This is really good because whenever you disable a foe, you will cripple them for 4 seconds. So it's really good with all of your CC on this build to cripple, and you already kind of do have a lot of cripple on this build, and that's really important for this next trait, which is Zealot's Aggression. So whenever you hit a target with cripple on it, you'll do 10% more damage, and that's a pretty good modifier too. And yeah, you kind of already have a lot of cripple on this build, so dull senses might be a little bit overkill sometimes, but it's still really good because you have more ability to get cripple on people that's independent of your big cripple skills. So you don't always need to use your F1 or your Test of Faith to get that cripple. You can sometimes combo people with Shield of Absorption, which is nice because now whenever you want to peel for yourself, like if you're being chased by people, you'll Shield of Absorption them away, and then they'll be crippled as well, so it's harder for them to catch up to you after you push them away. And your deflecting shot will also knock back and cripple, so it's just really good in my opinion to run this trait, and it gives you more chances to get more damage as well. Then Defender's Dogma is really good because it lowers the cooldown of your F1 whenever you block. So your F1 is a very low cooldown already, so getting 1 second of recharge every block will actually representatively be a good amount. So using your F1 and missing it can kind of feel bad, so you want to like go into block phase and survive, and then you can make up until your next sort of spear combo attempt. And then you have Pure of Sight, gives you more damage the further away from your target you are, so it just makes your longbow deal more damage than your sword generally. So that's kind of a thing that you don't really think about too much, right? You don't purposefully run away from your target to deal more damage. You just kind of play normally, right? It's just a nice damage modifier. But yeah, True Shot at max range can be very devastating. So it's really good at chasing people who are trying to run away, basically. And then lastly, you have Big Game Hunter. This is whenever you tether a foe, it will last 66% longer. So instead of 6 seconds, it will be a 10-second duration. And it will tick vulnerability every second along with cripple and burning. So it's really good because it increases your damage by 15% to your tethered foe, and it's kind of competing with heavy light. So this build is very combo oriented, and you want to CC people into like combos, and that makes the damage modifier of disabled foes from heavy light really good. But the thing is, yeah, you kind of want to do more damage to disabled foes because that's when your combos are happening, when you're disabling. But also, Big Game Hunter allows more combos to happen because it gives you a little bit more leeway in terms of, well, your Test of Faith is one of your big combo skills, and whenever that's triggered, it's a 6-second duration, and your Spear of Justice, when it lands, lasts for 6 seconds as well. So if you want to get the maximum play around both of them, you kind of have to use them at the same time, and that can be kind of predictable. So generally, I like to have Big Game Hunter so that I can make sure that I land the spear, and then I can go in with that extra 4 seconds of luxury to set up the Test of Faith and actually land a good combo, rather than struggling to get the good combo. And yeah, if I do land it, it's really big with heavy light, but Big Game Hunter is just going to give you more combo opportunity, and the damage modifier while they are tethered is still good, right? Like, you want to be tethering them and then you can still just auto attack and true shot from range. And yeah, just the fact that you have a longer tether is just super strong, because people hate being tethered, because basically the tether will allow you to pull them. And yeah, it gives you like sort of more you bait more cooldowns that way, because they're like, oh, am I gonna get pulled now? I'm gonna pop stability. I'm not being pulled because I have stability. Oh, it's still lasting on me because it's a 10-second cooldown. My stability is running out now. Am I gonna get pulled now? And then they might dodge to make sure that they don't get pulled full distance. And then like you're baiting out so many cooldowns just by having someone tethered, even if you're not going to actually pull them. So yeah, Big Game Hunter is my choice for sure. So those are the traits pretty much. And now let's go over the equipment. So I use a mix of Marauders, Berserker, and Valkyrie gear. I have pretty much Marauders on my armor, a mix of Marauders and Valkyrie on the trinkets, and then Berserker weapons. Basically, I just like to get to 50% crit chance because I'll have Fury, so that ends up being 70% crit chance. I have 200% crit damage, so your crits will do double damage, and like 2,400-ish power when you don't have the might stacks from your Fireworks rune. And Fireworks rune are like the perfect Dragonhunter runes because they give you power, perfect for a power build, give you a little bit of boon duration, it's not bad, boon duration is always good, and then it'll give you 25% movement speed passively, and Guardians always struggle with getting movement speed, so it's just nice. And then it'll also give you, every 20 seconds, it'll give you 6 stacks of Might, Fury, and Vigor for 6 seconds. And Fury's always good, Might's always good, and Vigor is also really good because the hard mitigation of this build is Aegis, and that's pretty much it. So you don't have too many evades on this build, so having more dodges is really good, so having that Vigor is kind of nice. It's just kind of like the perfect rune for Dragon Hunters. And then on the sword and shield, you'll be using Energy Cleansing. Energy Cleansing is just perfect. As I said, you want more dodges for more hard mitigation, and Cleansing helps you to fill the gap in between your Contemplation and your F2, so you have plenty of Conti Cleanse on this build. And also, just Energy Cleansing is kind of like the kiting setup. So most builds have like a aggressive weapon and then a defensive weapon set, and that's obviously the defensive weapon set here. So having Energy Cleansing just makes sense. You can't go wrong with that. You could go like Hydromancy if you really wanted to, for more like dueling, but in actual roaming scenarios, cleansing energy will give you better results. Then on your longbow, you'll be using Severance and Air Sigil. Air Sigil is just a really nice modifier for crit builds on single targets, and longbow is more of a single target weapon. It's got some AoE on it, but yeah, true shot is single target, and you're gonna crit and add a little bit more damage to your burst with Air Sigil. And then you also have Sigil of Severance, which is whenever you interrupt an enemy, you'll gain 250 precision and ferocity, and that's quite a large amount of stat, because it gives 500 stats basically whenever you interrupt the foe for 4 seconds. And this works out really well with the longbow, because oftentimes when you'll do your bursts, you'll be in the longbow, so you'll do something like your F1 and then you'll pull them, and I'm not going to proc this because they're not attacking, so they won't get interrupted, but then you'll pull them, and usually you'll interrupt someone when you pull them because they'll be, the pull has a very short cast time, right? So you can control when you pull them, and then that's kind of when you want to do your combo. So it works out that you gain the ferocity and the precision at that moment, and then you land your true shot. It has extra damage. You've crippled them as well because you've disabled them, and that'll give you the modifier of Zealot's Aggression, and yeah, you just get tons of damage with your burst because of that. It's really good. So yeah, and also with Deflecting Shot, deflecting shot is an AoE knockback, so it can hit multiple foes, which means it has multiple chances to interrupt. So it can just proc off of your deflecting shot, which is a very nice skill for peeling for yourself, and then you can kind of turn around and do like a true shot into that with your Severance proc. So yeah, it's really good. So that's pretty much your equipment. For food, I like to use either the fried oyster sandwiches, which give you minus 10% incoming damage and 70 power. Power is really good, and this build is sort of weak to power builds, so the incoming damage reduction is nice. But if you want to go more damage, just go for the sweet and spicy butternut squash soup, and that'll just give you 100 power and 70 ferocity. And then I just use whatever kind of sharpening stone. So yeah, that's pretty much the equipment. And the skills I'll be going over now are really strong on the longbow in World versus World. So puncture shot is a long range, kind of hard to land on moving targets, but it's a pretty decent auto attack. It's a projectile, and if there is a target behind the initial target, it will bounce to that one and then cripple both. And cripple obviously is really good because it helps you to keep up to the target, and it gives you modifiers. And how the bounce works is it kind of doesn't require physics to be realistic. It can kind of bounce, at angles, but it will not go backwards. So this target, it won't bounce off, so you don't get the cripple there. So it's just really good in World versus World because targets are generally near each other, so you can often get the cripple. Next is True Shot. True Shot is a massive attack, 1500 range, and it's piercing 2000 base damage. So this can crit up for like 7k when you've got your modifiers up like this. Yeah, like 7k right there. So it's massive, and it can be reflected. It's not unblockable, but it does pierce, so it's very reliable to hit on your target. It doesn't get like body blocked too often. But yeah, it's just an insane skill because of how much damage and how much range it has. But it is very kind of predictable because you see like this animation of where they get down on their knee and then they stop moving. So you kind of can't really use it to chase people because you lose your ground while they're moving away from you. And you can't really use it while running away because then they catch up to you. So you have to really commit when you use True Shot, which is nice. And next is Deflecting Shot. Deflecting Shot is a slow-moving projectile that blocks missiles and will pierce and is unblockable itself. So it also does a knockback. So it's mainly used for the knockback, not so much the projectile, because it's kind of hard to time that with like an actual projectile reflecting situation. But basically it's just a really good CC skill, and you can use it while facing any direction, and it's really good for hitting stationary targets, obviously because of how slow it is, and it has a cast time on top of being slow, so it's kind of hard to land on moving foes. But if they're chasing you, then it's kind of like a reliable, predictable movement from the enemy. They're going to be running straight towards you, so it'll be going straight back at them. That's a really good usage of the Deflecting Shot. Down bodies, also you can shoot that at the resers because they won't be moving. And it's also really good for using with your combos, right? So you got your F1, you'll pull people in, and then you'll use your Deflecting Shot, and then you push the map through, and then you use your True Shot right after. They've got plenty of cripple for damage. So yeah, pretty much a really good skill, but it's hard to land because it's has a cast time, and the closer you are to your target, the more likely it's going to land. And even if they're a moving target, you can sort of manipulate where it goes if you move during the cast time. So like say they're here and they're moving in this direction, I can move with them and kind of angle it while I'm moving towards it. Symbol of Energy is a Really good symbol actually, because it's the longest range symbol, I think. Actually, I think the staff symbol is the same, but it's a projectile as well, unlike all other symbols. So it can be reflected, but it does a decent duration burn on the initial hit, and then it will give out vigor to allies that stand in it. 3 seconds of vigor every pulse. So generally, I don't use this skill on like long range situations unless it's like, you know, a Zerg and it doesn't matter who you hit. Generally, you do want to use Symbol of Energy to kind of like put distance between you and your enemy. So like, say someone's coming up to me and I'm already peeling back while they're coming towards me. I'll use Symbol of Energy not on the foe who's chasing me. I'll use it like right under my feet, in between me and the target. So it gives me the vigor, which can stack up very high duration just from one symbol. And as you can see, there's 11 seconds on the vigor, and that's more than the cooldown is left on Symbol of Energy. So if you get every tick, you can get like permanent vigor because of the Fireworks rune. So that's really good, obviously, because dodges is hard mitigation, which this build definitely wants. And yeah, you can sort of use it like to trade with the enemy. So if they come close to you, you can like put it on yourself, and then if they come next to you, you can use an attack, and then you're sort of like doing 2 attacks for their 1 because you've got the symbol as well. And it's really good with the final skill, Hunter's Ward, which is sort of like a barrage from the Ranger Longbow. It's a little bit more restricted because you need line of sight to see it, but you also have to stand still while casting it. It will cripple and do a little bit of damage, but the final hit is the important part, which will do a massive attack, you know, like a little bit less than a true shot damage, which, you know, is a lot, but it will also create barriers around the target if the final hit lands, and that can be multiple targets you're hitting with it as well. And it puts a little barrier around them, and it's effectively a terrain, so they can't go through it or they'll get knocked back. And it's a very small ring that they're stuck in, so they can't really dodge or they'll get hit into the wall. So you can basically free cast on people, and it lasts 5 seconds. So it's a really strong attack. And yeah, you can Symbol of Energy someone in it. You can true shot them because they can't dodge your true shot. So landing that skill on someone is really big. Obviously, they can still get out of it if they dodge and then stun break as soon as they hit the wall, but then they're losing a stun break for that. So it's always just good to bait out cooldowns with the Longbow, because you can land, say if you don't land your true shot, you can land your Hunter's Ward, and if you don't land your Hunter's Ward, you can land your true shot. But that's that. Sword, the auto attack is kind of decent. It's not amazing. The sword too, though, that's really good. So it blinds if you are in range to land the hit, and then it'll put down a symbol which gives Fury. Fury is always nice, and it's also a 600 range port, so this is super important for kiting. So what you can do is you want to enable this option, show all enemy names, and with this option you'll be able to see neutral mobs everywhere in the world versus world, and you can like target them and know that they're there, because if you don't have the option on, it'll be like this. So it's like, well, is that a neutral mob in the distance? And then you gotta like hover over to see it. So it's just nice to know where they are, so you can just easily click and be like, okay, I want to get away from this guy, I want to port towards this guy. And you can even like premeditate a port. So it's like, okay, I know I want to port to this guy in a little bit, and then you can target it for yourself, especially if you're solo roaming, and then you take your own target and then you can port to it and create distance or juke people through terrain. So yeah, it's a really good skill. And your sword 3, not an amazing skill. It roots you in place, but it is useful for blocking projectiles. So it does a little bit of damage, but the projectiles move kind of slowly, so you need to be hitting someone who's not moving. You can sort of combine that with your symbol. So like if you port onto something and then you think that they're gonna counter pressure you, you're like using your sword 3 while you're in your sword symbol and gaining the fury, but it's not amazing. Next is your Shield of Judgment. This is a decent hitting skill, maybe like 1.4k, yeah, damage, but mostly what's important is the protection and Aegis that you can give to your allies and yourself. And we know that Aegis gives you a 20% damage modifier while you have it. So you can use your Shield of Judgment in the middle of your burst combos to get the modifier and do a lot more damage. Shield Absorption is obviously really good because it has so many uses to it. So when you use Shield Absorption, you knock back foes. It's a CC because of this trait. It'll also be a cripple, so that's really good. It's an instant cast CC as well, so there's very little counterplay to it, so you can time stuff very well. Like if someone leaps at you, you can immediately peel for yourself, and it's also really good for doing combos with your Test of Faith, right? So you pull people through and then you knock them back through, and you'll do a lot of damage. So in a way, it's like a damaging skill when combined with your Test of Faith. And then it's also a projectile block while you're channeling the skill for 4 seconds. So it's really good in World vs. World because projectiles and like long range classes are very common. So I mean, this build itself is one. So while you're channeling it, you're blocking projectiles for you and your allies, and then when it's about to end, you actually want to press the skill again to end it, and it's a little bit of a heal the longer you hold it. But like if you only want the knockback, you can just immediately press it and then press it again for the extra heal. So yeah, those are pretty much all the skills. The utilities, so Litany of Wrath is a meditation, so it's really good for giving you fury because it's not only is it a meditation, but whenever you heal, you get another meditation of Smiter's Boon. So you actually get 2 Monk's Focus procs from Litany of Wrath. So it heals for 4.5k healing just from simply using it. And then on top of that, it will also give you a healing buff, which gives you 33% of the damage you deal for 6 seconds back to you as healing. And that's really good in World vs. World because there's so many AoE situations to give you a lot of value out of that. So the more damage you deal, the more healing and sustain you'll get. So often what you want to do is you want to like put down a symbol or two, and then after you've got your damage ticking, then you'll start your Litany of Wrath to start doing damage while the other damage is ticking. And then you have Contemplation of Purity. Contemplation of Purity is a massive Conti cleanse. It removes all conditions in the game and converts them into boon. And it's also a nice stun break, and it gives you a little bit of healing because it's a meditation. So yeah, it's just your main form of like oh shit button. Like if you're in trouble, you press this button. That's pretty much it. Test of Faith. So we already talked about this skill a lot, but there's a little bit more to it. It gives you protection for 2 seconds on the activation of the trap. So you can sort of use it when you're in trouble. So because it has no cast time, like if I'm CC'd, I can use Test of Faith, and that'll give me protection to make me take less damage. Not the best use of it, right? Because you want to be using it for damage, but yeah, it's useful for that. And there's so when you put down your Test of Faith, if an enemy walks through it or you knock them through it, they will take the big damage. But if they port through it, they'll also take damage, even though they're technically, you know, if you think of it like through like actual physics, right? You wouldn't be passing through it, you'd be porting through it. But you actually are passing through the Test of Faith when you port. So The only way to avoid the test of faith by getting out of it is through evasion, so they can dodge through it, or through like invulns. So yeah, it's really good versus thieves because thieves want to port, but they also have a lot of dodges. So yeah, you just want to use test of faith aggressively usually, but it also can be used defensively because people have to play around it. So say if I put down test of faith and then I walk through it, well then they don't want to go through it unless they dodge. And if they dodge through it, then I can go back through it and they have to choose again whether they want to dodge back through it again. So just really good for kiting because it also cripples. Next is Judge's Intervention. So this is just like a better version of Symbol of Blades because it's twice the range. And as I said, you can call target for yourself and create a lot of distance by kiting and then porting to a target far away, like neutral mobs. And it's also a stun break, but yeah, mainly you just use this as like an aggressive tool, so it's not really used as a stun break. So you'll do like a 1200 range port while chasing someone into a 1500 range true shot, and you can get a lot of surprise on someone using an instant range 1200 port. So lastly is Renewed Focus. So it's a meditation, so it'll heal you a little bit. You go invuln while you're channeling this, and after it's finished, you gain all of your virtues back. So you want to be using your virtues liberally so that when you do end up using your Renewed Focus, you'll get all of them back and get the maximum value. So you don't want to be like caught in a situation where it's like, well, my F2's up, but if I use my F2, I'll die because it has a cast time. So I have to just invuln now, and then I'm like recharging my F2 when it's already up. So you need to kind of just either know ahead of time when you're going to want to use your invuln and then pop out your virtues ahead of time just to get their value. Generally the invuln, you want to save it for like a dodge kind of situation. So like say the enemy has like traps down. You can use your invuln to kind of like pop those traps and get value out of like the time that's being delayed by other people's cooldowns being used on you while you're invuln, and then you're getting your cooldowns back. And obviously all of your virtues are very high impact, so Renewed Focus is always going to give you something useful to use after it. And obviously your virtues, your F1 is Spear of Justice, so that will be an unblockable spear. It can actually hit multiple targets, so you can tether multiple targets, and it will reveal them and allow you to pull them for the duration of the spear. And there's a cooldown on the actual pulling of the spear of longer than the actual spear itself. So you can basically pull every other spear that you use, and it will also reveal for 10 seconds because of the Big Game Hunter trait. So that's really good versus thieves if it lands, because 10 seconds of reveal, even if you break the tether, it still gives the reveal for the full 10 seconds. So it's really massive at countering stealth classes if you can get the spear on them. And then obviously Pulsing Cripple and Burning will just pressure targets. And the F2 is a leap that will remove Immobilize and remove 2 conditions. So it can remove 3 conditions on that first tick, and then on the landing of the ability it'll remove another 3 conditions. So this can get interrupted a lot of times, but it can give you a lot of survivability and mobility if used correctly. And you want to use it to like reposition to land your longbow skills while not getting too much counter pressure yourself, or to like chase people. It's very versatile. Your F3 is Shield of Courage. This will give stability and stun breaks to your allies and yourself, and it's sort of a frontal cone block, and You can actually block for your allies. So if you use it on an ally right here, you can see they have the buff. That means they're blocking while I'm facing them. And you can use that selflessly, which is nice. DH is a very good team roaming build. And for yourself, you need to kind of be facing the attacks that are coming at you to actually block them. So in a way, backpedaling is unironically good when using that skill, because you want to be facing the damage that's hitting you, but sometimes people are going to be like trying to get behind you when you do it, so you want to be moving away from them while also facing them. And you can be using like your longbow skills in that time. So yeah, it's just a really good skill for securing stomps and reses on your allies, because you're blocking and getting stability while being able to, because it has no animation to actually keep blocking, so you can be using skills while using Shield of Courage. So it's a very aggressive skill in that way too, because they can't really counter pressure you while you're blocking and using those skills. So that is pretty much all the skills. The general usage of the skills is you want to just open up with your longbow. When you can, land your spear. If you think that they're not going to dodge your true shot, then you want to go for it. If not, then you want to keep auto attacking, because it does decent damage, and just bait out those cooldowns. And then when you decide you want to go in for the kill, you can Hunter's Ward, and if they get stuck in the trap, you can land your symbols, and you can put your spear down and then knock them through that, or your test. And then once you've gotten pretty much all of your damage combo out, you want to swap to your sword and kite around. Maybe you can peel for yourself with Shield of Absorption. And obviously right before you go into your longbow, you want to use your Aegis again, and then you can go for the true shot with the damage modifier. So yeah, that's pretty much how the build works. There's a lot of kind of like mind games, I would say, to the build, because you want to land your big combo on people, and they obviously want to not get it on them. So in a way, your Spear of Justice will just pressure people, and you want to like put your Test of Faith on top of them, and they'll try to get away from you. And in that time that they're trying to get away from you, you can just be auto attacking them, and then once they get away from you far enough, you pull them back in with the Spear of Justice. And the further you pull someone with the spear, the longer they'll be CC'd, because of the distance formula, obviously. And yeah, you pull them back in, and they lose all that time that they got running away from you. They get pulled into your Test of Faith, and they're also now getting CC'd for longer, because the distance of them being pulled is further. So yeah, generally just land your spear on them, and then just keep pressuring them, land your Test of Faith on them, and then pull them once they try to get out. And if they don't try to get out, then you can land your Longbow 3 and push them out, and then pull them back in, and get a lot of damage from that Test of Faith passage. And yeah, just try to land your true shot. Don't just spam it out. Wait till they've dodged or used a cooldown. That's pretty much it.